Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Glenn Osaki, the Director of the Office of International Affairs for the USC Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism, and Senior Representative for the USC Center on Public Diplomacy. CPD is a research, analysis, and professional training organization dedicated to furthering the study and practice of global public diplomacy. Since our founding in 2003, we have strengthened the field by hosting robust discussions about the future of public diplomacy and celebrating achievement through awards such as the Ameri Prize for Innovation in Public Diplomacy, which is endowed by entrepreneur and diplomat Goli Ameri. And it is precisely for that reason that I'm pleased to welcome to this webinar Morgan O'Brien, the 2024 recipient of the Ameri Prize. Morgan is a 15-year veteran of the Foreign Service who recently began an assignment as the deputy spokesperson at the U.S. mission to NATO in Brussels, Belgium. But he was awarded the Ameri Prize primarily due to his innovative strategies and significant impacts supporting the Office of Visa Services over the previous 2 years. As the first ever industry liaison for the Bureau of Consular Affairs, Morgan spearheaded a public diplomacy strategy that transformed perceptions of U.S. visa processing from a source of frustration into a symbol of America's openness for business following the global pandemic. His efforts also showcased the broader potential of visa services to advance America's foreign policy and commercial priorities. Morgan, it's great to have you here on the USC campus this week. I'm really pleased to introduce you to our audience today.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Glenn. Thank you very much. And this is a real honor of frankly, my career. It's the most rewarding 2 years that I had professionally. Now, I would say that my greatest accomplishment are my 3 children who are watching from Brussels, Belgium. You guys better be behaving and listen to your mother. But that's enough about you guys. We're here to talk about my other favorite subject, the great work we got to do with the Visa Office.
Okay, well, Morgan, let's start. The Ameri Prize recognizes innovation in public diplomacy. So what does innovation mean to you? And how have you been able to generally employ innovative thinking in your work with the State Department?
So right before we came on, I kind of cheated and I was like, let me just look up the definition of innovation, and you'll never believe what it said. It said the art of innovating. But beyond that, honestly, if lunacy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a new outcome, I think that innovation's the opposite of that. It's taking a problem set and putting a fresh set of eyes on it. Now, for the work that we did in the Visa Office, that was channeled through me literally stepping away from the State Department. I was off campus, about 5 hours up the 101 here, 2.5 once we get the high-speed rail, at a small business college called Stanford. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And I was outside of the State Department, and this was right at the cusp of the pandemic. And I had, over the course of my 2 years on campus there, 100 people, so pretty much one person a week, ask me, once they found out that I was a U.S. diplomat, ask me about visas, right? Because there were student visas. We're right there in the heart of Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. So there were some of the high-skilled labor visas that had questions. The sports teams that, they're, especially even in the Bay Area, the pro teams would have questions. And I realized that this was all during COVID also. So I was literally outside of that COVID bubble. I was outside of the metaphoric DC bubble that we talk about. And I was getting this real-time feedback from our users about what the State Department could be doing to better serve them during some of the most difficult times imaginable. And normally when we talk about innovation, you're thinking about fresh ideas, especially in 2025. How do we use big data and AI to infuse it? What I found was almost the reverse, was taking a step back and giving that human touch, that diplomatic touch that we're all paid for as foreign service officers, to help people understand the process. Because make no mistake, we had the system was there. It was just doing a little bit better job telling the story. And the innovation we brought to that, storytelling, especially here on campus at USC, there's the Spielberg building and the George Lucas building. We're in a company town. The industry here is Hollywood. Storytelling is real and it's important and it's a big business. And that's what we do as public diplomacy officers. But beyond that, what I realized the innovative step was going on the offense, not letting other people define us and our processes, but getting out into the United States. We ultimately visited all 50 states during the year, businesses of all sizes, and helping schools of all sizes, travel and tourism, agriculture, and just identifying how we can help them work through things and figure out the visa process. And that's ultimately what became the 50 for 50 initiative, and ultimately what we put the package together for that ultimately won this incredible award.
Wow. Well, congratulations for that work, that innovation. It's really exciting to hear what you were able to accomplish during that time. Let me ask you, for a prize like the Ameri Prize, how do you think that this award spurs innovation, especially in a large organization like the State Department? And why does that matter?
Right. Speaking of storytelling, government bureaucracies have a reputation, and a lot of times it's a bad reputation. Thanks to innovators and diplomats, truly entrepreneurial diplomats like Goli Ameri, a dear friend to both you and I, the patroness of this award and for who it's named, and institutions like the Center on Public Diplomacy here at the University of Southern California, you show that it's okay to take that step out and kind of break the mold and innovate, right? And look for new ways to solve problems. Because you've given me and my predecessors like Alexander Hunt and Alice Spenceley, who both won this award, you give us an opportunity to have the spotlight a bit and showcase how, by bringing fresh ideas to these challenges, we're able to address them and help our customers, whether that's the U.S. taxpayer, that's customer number one. But in the case with us, with visa services, it's tens of millions of people around the planet that benefit from streamlined processes, from innovations that we bring, and just making sure that they know that they're aware of it. And if that happens in a vacuum, if people don't hear about these stories, it might as well not happen. So having a showcase like the Ameri Prize and a platform here in Los Angeles to showcase it is a great way to hopefully inspire others. Like I was inspired by Alex and Alice. I really look forward to it. It's almost that time of year again to see who's going to win for 2025.
Yeah, we've just sent out the cable. We're starting to receive applicants and interest inquiries about it. And you have some advocates for you in consular affairs and in the work that you did as well, right?
Sure. It all started with a cold email, right? I was out of the department. I was on leave without pay. Thanks to the flexibility of the State Department, they were able to let me go to business school as a 40-year-old. I was, it was like the movie Old School. Will Ferrell's son's here. It wasn't quite like that. I had 3 kids at the time. But I was up there. One of my classes was with a former New York Times editor that literally he taught us how to write cold emails. So I actually got to apply what I learned in the classroom. And when I was looking for jobs, when I was coming back to the State Department, I recognized the problem that I saw there on campus in Palo Alto. I found a leader, this truly visionary deputy assistant secretary that oversaw visa services, a woman named Julie Stuff. And I pitched Julie on the idea. She got back to me within 3 hours and said, "You're hired." And now the bureaucracy took a couple months to kind of get the gears going. So I didn't really get on board till November. But, it started with Julie, but Julie's boss was our former assistant secretary, an incredible diplomat named Rena Bitter, who is a Fortune 100 caliber CEO. And I can say that because I was surrounded by, students like that up at Stanford. And we had CEOs come all the time and talk to us. And then obviously in this job, I was engaging them all the time. And the leadership that I saw between Julie and Rena and then, this whole team that I was surrounded by, I just saw that we have top-notch talent that were really tackling some of the hardest challenges that you can imagine. And what made them so special was they believed in the idea, they believed in me, and they gave me some rope to go ahead and go out there and solve problems. And thankfully, there weren't any major mistakes or anything like that made along the way, but I had the leeway to take risks and be innovative and think literally outside the box and problem solve. And if it wasn't for them and that kind of green light that I got, this never would have happened.
Wow, that's amazing. So you talked about talent and leadership, and so we have many students, even early career professionals that are joining us on this webinar today. And so what led you to your work as a Foreign Service officer, and what would you most enjoy about that work? I guess it's really a question for many of those that are interested in pursuing such a career.
Right. So working in the Foreign Service is a dream. It's this opportunity to represent this country that's given me so much. And there's actually an Annenberg tie here. At the turn of last century, a young woman, 13 years old, her name was Michelina Spadanuda, and she came across the Atlantic through Ellis Island and started a family on Long Island. And to this day, she's my great grandmother, and she's an immigrant from Italy. Was an immigrant from Italy. She's no longer with us. And my cousin, Sophia Bajoria Procillo, is a student here at Annenberg.
Oh, fantastic!
And I think about that story just as this beautiful example of how America's this land of opportunity. And this young woman came across the ocean not knowing what to expect, and she had 9 children and on the more than 50, more than 30 grandchildren, more than 50 great grandchildren. And we've all gotten to do great things because she took that risk and was innovative and entrepreneurial herself to come here to the United States. So more than 100 years later, here I am, here my cousin Sophia is telling this great story about the United States of America and kind of paying it forward for all these opportunities and sacrifices that our great grandma made for us. And I get to do that in real time. I've gotten to do that in places ranging from Congo to Kuala Lumpur, from Baghdad to Brazzaville. I've served the country, and it's been just an amazing opportunity because I hope it comes across, but I truly believe in what this country stands for.
It does come across.
Okay, this is
very genuine.
And it's funny. I was an Air Force officer for 6 years, public affairs, and then I was able to get a job working at the U.S. mission to the United Nations, where a wonderful ambassador named Rick Grinnell, who's now with the administration again, hired me out of the Air Force and hired me to USUN. Mm-hmm. And when I was there as a civil servant, and the ambassador's residence was at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel at the time, and all the FSOs got to bring a date to the Waldorf, and I didn't because I was just a civil servant. So I said, I can pass a test. And so I took the test on principle, and sure enough, I ended up in the Foreign Service for that. And that was my path there. But there are a lot of paths to representing your country, and public diplomacy has its public diplomacy. There are a lot of ways to do that. You can be a public diplomat here in Los Angeles, helping get the World Cup ready or the Olympics ready. Those are two major showcases that, sure, the State Department will play a role, but if you want to get into foreign affairs, that's an awesome way to do that. Or looking for other, NGOs and opportunities around the world to build up your experience and knowledge. And if I was a 22-year-old student, those are the kind of experiences, in addition to serving the country in the military, which I thought was wonderful too for me. But short of that, if that isn't your bag, I would look for opportunities with these other organizations and be innovative that way and creative that way to find your opportunities.
Okay. So gain some experience, something that you're passionate about, be innovative, entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
Good advice.
In everything. That's
let me shift gears just for a second. So you've recently taken on a new role, and that's with NATO in Brussels. What can you tell us about that role?
Sure. One of the best parts about the Foreign Service is it can be challenging, especially with kids, but moving and getting new experiences every 2 or 3 years. So as my time as the Industry Liaison wrapped up, I endeavored upon a new assignment. I'm a public diplomacy officer with the State Department, and I was assigned to the U.S. mission to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is headquartered in Brussels. And there, I'm the deputy spokesperson. And in that capacity, I oversee, we have some of the largest social media accounts in the European Bureau. So I get to be a content creator. We obviously work with the press and media all the time, and we have a steady flow of visitors coming through and supporting major events, whether it's a foreign ministerial, which means that it's the foreign minister, or in our case, the Secretary of State, defense ministerials that are ministers of defense, or in our case, the Secretary of Defense. And then every June or July or so, there's a summit, which is the head of state. In our case, it'll be the president. And we support all of those events. And that's fantastic. One thing that we're focusing on right now is advancing the foreign policy goals of how to make America safer, how to make it stronger, and how to advance American prosperity. And the last couple of years, the work I got to do with the Bureau of Consular Affairs, working with industry and advancing commerce, I think really dovetails, especially in that third piece there about advancing American prosperity, looking for opportunities to showcase American businesses and help promote those corporations around the world. But it's a two-way street too. When I think of businesses, my father was a small business owner and an entrepreneur. I think of the workers that make those businesses great, and figure out ways that our foreign policy can impact America, and find opportunities to get outside of that DC bubble that I was talking about, or even the Silicon Valley or New York bubbles, and really kind of get into middle America and showcase how us having that global reach with business can benefit workers and people that really make this country as great as it is.
Fantastic. Let me go back to a comment you made just a minute ago about these big sporting events that are coming up. World Cup in 2026 here in LA, we're in the US, Canada, Mexico, as well as the Olympic and Paralympic Games in 2028. And I know that you did a lot of work in sports diplomacy, and I think we have some colleagues that are tuning into the webinar today that have a particular interest in sports diplomacy. What advice would you give to those that are working in sports diplomacy, or even us here in Los Angeles as we prepare? And if the LA 28 organizing committee is listening in, like, what are some things from your point of view would be beneficial for us to know or to think about?
The U.S. government has really prioritized these events. And just last week, the president had the head of FIFA in the Oval Office to showcase the Club World Cup trophy, which I don't know if you say you need a key to open it. It's this whole, these global mega sporting events. And we have 3 huge showcase ones over the next 9 years from today, I think, is when the Salt Lake 2034 Winter Olympics are. Working our way back to 2028, LA Summer Games will be here. And then we're about 430-ish days away from the FIFA 2026 World Cup kicking off in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. these are all global showcases for the United States, for our culture and values, and then also for our industry too. So these are tremendous platforms to really cover everything that I just talked about in terms of our foreign policy priorities. We're going to have all the eyes in the world on the United States over the next 9 years, and really over the next 3 years, intensely. And that's a golden opportunity. It's going to generate. You see the game plan for LA28 and what folks like Casey Wasserman are expected to deliver to this incredible city, and the legacy that they're building on with the LA84 games, and how Peter Uber literally was Times Man of the Year for the work that he did in turning those games around, even with the Soviet boycott, and making sure that they were a tremendous success. They were profit generating. And the best example of those games that I can think of was they built tennis courts in Compton because of the LA84 games and because of the legacy of that. And there are 2 little girls that learned how to play tennis on those courts who grew up to become Venus and Serena Williams.
Absolutely.
And we talked a moment ago about storytelling, and especially here. I mean, Will Smith won the Oscar for playing their dad in King Richard. But you talk about storytelling here in Hollywood, and just how with these opportunities with sports diplomacy, we can tell this powerful story of what sports can unlock and unleash. And you can never underestimate the power of mythology. Again, on a campus whose mascot is the Trojan, right? The power of mythology and inspiring the best out of humanity.
Yeah.
And if I sound Pollyannish, I totally get that. But just drawing the best out of the people, that's what makes this country the greatest country on earth. And doing that and enabling that, if our government can play a key role in that, whether that's hosting the global mega sporting events or helping businesses or bringing people to study here on campus, then I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, we are very excited about the games that are coming up. I know that you had a role with the NBA as well. And the NBA obviously is really big here with Lakers and Clippers and WNBA. Women's basketball team that we have here in Los Angeles. Anything you want to share about your time in that role?
One of the things I just said was about the best part about the State Department was getting to change jobs, and it's just the diversity in the jobs that I've had. I've been a music producer. I've been a mid-level sports executive. I've been a consul general, and I've been a spokesperson. And my time at the NBA gave me a front row seat to business, right? I got exposure, again, outside of Washington. I could understand what the business world needed because I was sitting there at NBA headquarters for every day for a year and recognizing what they needed to be that elite brand that was helping promote the United States and our interests around the world. A quarter of the NBA is international. If you look at the top 10 NBA players right now, it's just filled with guys from the Balkans, with stars from Africa that represent how global the game is. And I got to spend a year there at the NBA helping open doors. And they would always say that God gave the NBA Yao Ming, right? A guy that was worth, by some estimates, $800 million to the league. One man was worth that much. Well, the NBA said, okay, thank you. Now it's incumbent upon us to identify the Indian Yao Ming or the African, recognizing that Africa is a continent, not a country. And looking at these different billion-person markets and helping raise them up. And they built academies all over the world to help get these young men into the system to learn about different cultures and prepare them for the NBA game. And to play a small role in that for a year was incredibly rewarding and eye-opening. And hopefully I brought a lot of that experience from the private sector back with me to the department.
I'm sure you did, and definitely a dream role. I think you've had a number of different dream roles. And I want to ask you a little bit about that. I'm going to remind our audience that we may have time for a question or two. I mean, I have lots of
easy questions only.
I have a colleague forward those. But if you have a question, please put it into the chat, into the Q&A on the call. But you mentioned just briefly about your international role, and that Yeah, from Kuala Lumpur to Malaysia to Brazzaville, Congo. And what would you say about that opportunity, these international postings, and what has that meant to you individually, for your family, for your career? And, we have so many international students here at the university. Many of the students in our master's in public diplomacy program are actually international students that are here. So I know that they're very interested in your experience.
Yeah, I looked this up. You told me there were 50,000 students on campus. 17,000 of them are international, which is amazing. And that speaks to several things. One, just the strength and the drawing power of a school like the university. And this is just one school. I mean, it's a fantastic school, and it's a global brand here at Southern Cal. But if you scale that out nationwide, just like my experience, that brought me to the industry liaison role, this is America's unfair advantage. We can attract this incredible talent. International students are a $32 billion a year industry for the United States. So this is helping fund these great programs. This is bringing a rich collection of talent to the United States, and it's an amazing way to capitalize on everything that makes these campuses wonderful. I would also say that bringing folks in has been definitely enriching to me, but at the same time, going out and seeing the world in places like Brazzaville or Kuala Lumpur has been fantastic in reminding me how lucky I feel to be an American. Just when I realized how much pride people take that are non-Americans in the United States of America, and how they view us in the role that we hold on planet Earth. There's a way that I feel that it's incumbent upon me and my colleagues to carry ourselves as representatives of this great country and everything it stands for. And I thought I was patriotic when I got out of the military, but I really learned patriotism when you're living in these communities and you realize what it means to be American.
Yeah, we spoke about that earlier today, even from my own experiences, being able to live overseas for 15 years professionally, and the international experience that I gained, and representing big American brands in countries like China and in India and Singapore and Australia. It was really the opportunity that opportunity of a lifetime. And I really recommend for anyone who has a chance to get a posting overseas, whether it's for the Foreign Service, for the government, or in a private environment, that there's so much to gain in this really interconnected world that we are in. Let me ask you about the service that you mentioned in the very beginning about working with the U.S. Air Force. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's a whole interesting role that you had to play. What were some of the things that you learned there that helped to fuel your career?
Sure. I showed up on my first base in Dayton, Ohio on August 18th, 2001. And 3 weeks later, the world changed immediately. And I went from being a knucklehead who just maybe I still am a knucklehead, but I went from a knucklehead who had just graduated college to somebody that was going to have to go to war within a few months. Mm-hmm. And that forces you to grow up really quickly. Being in the military was transformational in my life. It would have been regardless, but the circumstances that were thrust in front of me unexpectedly forced me to grow up quickly. But all of a sudden, you're responsible for people when you're there at Baghdad International Airport in 2003 as a 23-year-old. There's immediate responsibility that's thrust into your lap. You have to make decisions in difficult situations. And all of a sudden, I wasn't kicking down doors in Fallujah. I wasn't, an Apache helicopter pilot or anything like that. And I respect those tier one operators also. They get it at the extreme end. But even somebody like me that was just a public affairs officer, I was out there. I was in difficult situations, but they were formational and foundational in my life and career, and put me in a situation that I still draw from those experiences throughout the rest of my service. And I've spoken a couple times about paying it forward. I wear the fact that I'm a veteran very proudly, because I recognize that there are folks that I benefit from the folks that came before me. it's the veterans of World War II and Korea and Vietnam, the first Gulf War. But then I also owe it to the folks that are coming after me that when people think of a veteran, they think of that standard of excellence, that dedication, and that level of commitment.
Well, Morgan, you have had a illustrious career. You've been able to do so many different things around the world, in the military, playing different roles now with NATO, and particularly what we recognized with you with the Ameri Prize. Any last comments that you'd like to make before I close the session today?
Yeah, two last things, right? This is public diplomacy, right? And I'm very proud of the accomplishments that we were able to put forward. Nothing happens without me, without my team around.
Sure.
We went to all 50 states, but it wasn't just me that was going to all 50 states. We were able to scale it out. And dozens of my colleagues who weren't public affairs officers got exposure in front of audiences talking about visa services around the country. This doesn't happen without them. This doesn't happen without the leadership that I talked about, whether it was Ambassador Bitter, Deputy Assistant Secretary Stuff, guys like Brian McInerney, Brooke Warenberg, who were all wonderful. And then I would also want to mention my family. This professional award doesn't happen without having a wonderful partner and my wife, Jill, and then 3 kids that are the world to me that I want to make proud of me. And hopefully I get to the Ameri Prize. And then finally, the Center on Public Diplomacy, folks like Goli Ameri, people like you, Glenn, and your team, Cesar and Renee, that make this thing happen and recognize the work that my team did. It really has been just the icing on a cake that would have been wonderful in terms of our accomplishments anyway.
Well, that's terrific. Thank you so much, Morgan, and really appreciate your time with us today. And I'd like to invite our audience to tune in for the next CPD event. We have a panel discussion that will be co-hosted by the Los Angeles World Affairs Council. It's going to be held here at USC in celebration of Women's History Month on March 31st. It will feature a panel of distinguished women discussing their careers in public diplomacy, featuring Consul General Sophie Hotat from the Consulate of Belgium in Los Angeles, Consul General Vendile Sandusa from the Consulate of South Africa in Los Angeles, and former Consul General of France, Julie Duhal-Bedos, who is now serving as diplomat in residence and interim director for the USC Center for Public Diplomacy.
I'm having lunch with Julie today.
That's right. That's right. This will all be moderated by Goli Ameri, former Assistant Secretary of State for Cultural and Educational Affairs, and the person who endowed your prize. So again, this panel discussion will take place on March 31st at 1:30 p.m. We'll have information on our website, so I hope that all of you can join us then. So until then, thank you very much, and have a great afternoon.